the tribunal had that he is representing his son, he is a trustee. So the laws, which was a share of laws which were there, was then allowable in the hands of the son. In the subsequent year, the tribunal had no, he is a partner in his individual capacity. Now in those years there was an income. So now the income is separately taxed, the loss is being carried forward in the hand of the son. So in this case, the Attorney General who appeared before the Lordship of the Bombay High Court was directed that he would ask the assessing officer not to do this injustice. And therefore, in other words, the assessing officer was directed to allow the loss of the first year in the hand of the assessor, because that decision was not correct. I hope we appreciate it. So the court went one step ahead of principles of res judicata and said that this decision, revised decision, which is the correct decision, should not lead to injustice. Now take another example. Suppose if I am in a money lending business. In the first year, the assessing officer accepts that yes, the loans taken, given, promissory notes given, are my money lending transactions. So therefore they are business transactions. In 4th or 5th year, they have become bad. Now the assessing officer cannot turn around and say that no, they are bad debts, they are not liable as bad debts. Because a great injustice is being done by the decision which was taken by the assessing officer in the Take another example. Suppose if the assessing officer holds that here, these are regular debts in the course of the business. Then in the subsequent year, when I am preferring a claim of bad debts, at that point of time, we cannot say that no, this debt has become bad earlier to the year in which he had held it to be genuine and a regular business debt. Because that will be putting me to an injustice and iniquity, and therefore such things should not be done. So this decision, therefore, is a very vital decision when we apply the principle of res judicata. And one more aspect was clarified by the court was that principles of res judicata is not applicable to income tax authorities. Now the tribunal is not an income tax authority. Whether the principle of res judicata is applicable to the tribunal, the court said yes, it will be applicable, and that the tribunal should consider the principle of res judicata whenever this issue is arising, because it is part of the machinery for computation of income and tax liability of the system. So even if it is not within the four corners of income tax authorities, but it has to consider the principles of res judicata. You cannot say that, well, principles of res judicata is applicable only to income tax authorities. So these are the few decisions where the courts have held that the principles of res judicata is not applicable. Now we will turn to some few more decisions where the court has said that the principle of res judicata is applicable, and where they have said so. And a very well-known decision of the Supreme Court is the case of Radha Swami Satsang. This decision is being time and again referred to by various courts, including Supreme Court. And I have given a decision as lately in 2007 also. This decision was followed and approved by the Supreme Court itself in the case of Vidyut Bantling Limited. Here, as you will read in the slide, strictly speaking, res judicata does not apply to income tax proceedings. Though each assessment year being a unit, what was decided in one year might not apply in the following year, where a fundamental aspect permitting through the different assessment years has been found as a fact, one way or the other, and the parties have allowed that position to be sustained by not challenging the order, it would not be at all appropriate to allow the position to be changed in subsequent years. Now, how this is applicable? Let us see few facts of Radha Swami Satsang. You might be aware that Radha Swami Satsang is an old institution, a religious institution, formed sometime in 1861. There were some gurus who were conducting various courses, discourses, and they used to give lectures. In 1902, the third Sadguru then was there and formed a central council because various property money used to be given to Sadguru as an offering, and the Sadguru used to use it only for this religious activity. They have never used that money for their own purposes. So therefore it was formed institution. So a central council was formed by Sadguru to look after these properties. In assessment in 1937-38, the commissioner accepted that here Radha Swami Satsang is a religious institution under section 431 of the 1920 Act. And for subsequent years, it was enjoying the benefits and the income was exempt. That it was applied for the objects of the right. In 1964-65 to 1969-70, the assessing officer took a decision that Radha Swami Satsang is not a religious institution, it is not a charitable institution within the meaning of section 2 clause 15. Their activities are not religious and charitable activities. After looking into the activities, the tribunal had, yes, it is a charitable activities within the four corners of section 215. But the High Court reversed that decision and had no, the activity is not a charitable institution. Then the matter reached the Supreme Court and it was contended that all these years, not less than 5 decades, it is an accepted position by the department and also by the SSC that the SSC is a charitable institution and has been granted a benefit. Now in this year, no new facts, no new evidence has been gathered or induced by the SSC officer to change his view, change his stand. And therefore, the principles of res judicata is not to be applied here. And you cannot say that, well, the Radha Swami Satsang is not entitled to or to hold that, well, I will treat it as non-charitable institution. That decision of the assessing officer is incorrect. So that is why the court held that when a fundamental aspect permitting to the different assessment years has been found as a fact, one way or the other, and the parties have allowed that position to be sustained by not changing the law. Then, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Then the principle of res judicata is applicable. That once the decision is taken in the earlier year, that is binding on the department, binding on this. I stand corrected. So, what is held by the court is that once that decision is taken and over a period of years it is accepted by both the sides, then that decision cannot be changed unless some new facts, new evidence has been brought on it to come to that conclusion. So it cannot be the assessing officer cannot in his whims and fancies decide that, well, now I hold that no, it's not. I do not like Radha Swami Satsang activities, so therefore I will hold it as non-charitable. Now, the second decision is Durga Prasad Bole, again of the Supreme Court. Yeah. Well, I thought that the facts are required to be explained, otherwise it will not go through well, but I'll try and do that as quickly as possible. Now I'll deal with a few of them only. Here, a certain income from property was taxed in the hands of the SSC. The SSC contended, no, this is not taxable as my income because I am a trustee of a trust formed by my wife. The assessing officer held that you have not been able to prove the source from which this property is acquired by your wife. Therefore, it will be treated as your income. Then, for the subsequent 10 years, the assessor himself offered that income in his return and paid tax. After a period of decade, he, like assessing officer, got up and said, no, sorry, I made a mistake. It is not my income. I am a trustee of the trust created by my wife and therefore it is not taxable in my hand. That was rejected, that contention, and that contention was rejected by the tribunal, was approved by the Supreme Court, saying that for over years you have accepted. So please appreciate, in Rajaswamy Sansan, the assessing officer had accepted the stand for over years that it is a charitable institution. Here the SSC accepted that this is my income, and then he took a U-turn and said, no, it's not mine. Then both were prevented from contending that and because the principles of res judicata in such circumstances will apply. And the crux of the matter is, no new facts have been brought on account. The third is Dalmia Dadri. Here also, very precisely stated, the company had paid 1% commission, 1% of the net profit as a commission to A, pursuant to an agreement. Then, after 3 years, the company stopped paying to A. A filed a suit against the company. That suit was settled outside the court, and the consent terms were arrived, whereby the company paid a lump sum amount of 70,000 rupees to the A. This 70,000 rupees was disallowed by the assessing officer on the ground it is a capital expenditure and hence it is not allowable. The court said that in the earlier 3 years you have yourself treated this as a revenue expenditure and allowed that thing. This is in respect of the very same contract. So, your own decision will bind you in the 4th year when you are taking a decision that is capital expenditure. You can't take this decision. So, the principles of res judicata were once again approved and applied even in the tax proceedings. And we are a little short of time. Let me come to the next slide. Parallel to res judicata, there is another principle known as principles of consistency. Or in other words, of finality. Once a particular decision is taken in 1 year, 2nd year, 3rd year, consistently, then neither the department nor the SC can change that stand unless, once again, the rider or the limitation is a new fact, new circumstance is adduced. So, for this principle of consistency, these decisions are, and I am referring to mainly to the Bombay High Court decisions, as we are then under the jurisdiction of the Bombay High Court. In both the case of Dara Patel and Gopal Goyal, the facts were that whether it is a capital gains or business income. In the case of Mahindra Lifespace Developers, the SC had sold a portion of a piece of land and offered as capital gains. It was accepted by the department as assessing officer as capital gains. In subsequent year, the assessing officer had said, no, this is not capital gain, this is business income. And the Bombay High Court held that your own decision is binding on you. The principle of res judicata is applicable and you cannot change your stand. In Sulabh International also, the Patna High Court had considered the IPP situation like Radhaswamy Sansan, where the institution had to be charitable, but in the subsequent, because it was incorporated sometime in 1971, Then, in this year, for the first time, the assessing officer said that no, I will put it as non-charitable. The court said that it is binding one. So we will go to the next slide. The doctrine of principle promissory estoppel. The doctrine of promissory estoppel is that when one party has, by his words or conduct, made to another a promise or assurance which was intended to affect the legal relation between them and to be acted on accordingly, then once the other party has taken him at his word and acted on it, the party which gave the promise or assurance cannot afterwards be allowed to revert to the previous legal relationship as if no such promise or assurance had been made by him, but he must accept that legal relation subject to qualification which he himself has so introduced, even though it is not supported on point of law by any consideration but only by his words. So, saying that once you have said one thing, then you have to adhere to it. You cannot change your word. You have to keep your promise. You have to keep your words. Thus, the estoppel is a part of the law of evidence and prevents a man from saying one thing one time and the opposite thing at another time, while res judicata precludes a man from evolving the same thing in a successive litigation as explained. Here, if we very quickly deal with the decision of Kerala High Court in DKV and Company, we know when the cert takes place, the disclosures were being made. Nowadays it has become less. And the officers of the department used to promise that no, you offer this income, you pay tax and interest, we will not have a penalty. Whether such promise will stop the assessing officer from levying penalty. If the court had that no such promise will stop him from levying penalty, because he is not empowered to decide whether to levy penalty or not to levy penalty. The statute has laid down the provisions, and if the assessing falls within the four corners of the provisions, he will be liable for penalty. The assessing officer cannot give such promise, and even if such promises are given, it will not stop the department from levying penalty. Similarly, the decision of the Bombay High Court in Nirmala and Mehta is also a very interesting decision. Here the SC had earned some Sikkim lottery and offered for taxation and paid tax on that. Subsequently, the SC realized that no, the Sikkim lottery is not taxable under the Income Tax Act. So he preferred a claim which was rejected by the assessing officer. He lost both the appeals and the matter came before the High Court. The High Court said that if a particular amount is not taxable as income, because it is not an income under the provisions of the Income Tax, then such amount cannot be taxed. You are stopped from taxing that amount as income, because it is not an income. And the assessing officer is not the person who can decide that whether to levy penalty or not levy penalty. He cannot give such promise. The principle of estoppel will not prevent the department from levying penalty. Similarly, the principle of estoppel prevents the department from taxing such income, taxing such amount, because it is not an income within the meaning of Income Tax Act. Therefore, the court said that under Article 265 of the Constitution, no tax will be levied or collected except by authority of law. If there is no authority of law which entitles you to tax, then it cannot be taxed. Another interesting decision is of Mindtree Limited. Here, subsection 6 of section 115 JB, minimum alternate tax, and subsection 6 of section 115O had provided that a unit in seats or a special economic zone developer will not be liable for minimum ordinary tax or will not be liable for dividend distribution tax. And a proviso was inserted by the Finance Act 2011 in 115 JB with effect from 1st of April 2012 and 115O was concerned with effect from 1st of June 2011. That from this day onward it will be liable to minimum ordinary tax and dividend distribution tax. The SEC challenged this amendment on the ground that you had already promised me that I am not liable for both these provisions, and therefore I have already made substantial investment. Now you can't change and take a U-turn and say that sorry, now it will be taxable from subsequent year. The court said that you can't sit on the judgment of the legislature. Legislature in its wisdom decided a sunset clause for this provision. You cannot challenge the authority. The principles of estoppel cannot challenge or deter the legislative action or a decision, and therefore both the provisions are valid. More so when they are not retrospective in operation. They are telling you in advance that after 6 months, after 12 months, now your income is going to be liable to minimum alternate tax. Now we come to the next slide. So, if we conclude the principles of res judicata, it says, thus it can be stated that the principles of res judicata is not generally applicable to decisions of income tax authorities. An assessment for a particular year is final and conclusive between the parties only in relation to the assessment for that year, and it is not binding either on the assessing or the department in subsequent year. However, if the earlier decision is not arbitrary or perverse, or if it has been arrived at after due inquiry, or if no fresh facts are claimed before the tribunal, which is the last fact-finding authority giving the later decision, and if the tribunal giving the earlier decision has taken into consideration all material evidence, in that case the principle of res judicata will apply. So if we go to the next slide, it's a binding precedent, and the next slide. Now what is binding? It is well settled that it is only the ratio descending that has the precedent value. As observed by the Supreme Court in S.P. Gupta, it is elementary that what is binding on the court in a subsequent case is not the conclusion arrived at in a previous decision, but the ratio of that decision, for it is the ratio which binds as a precedent and not the conclusion. A judicial precedent is only an authority for what it actually decides and not what may come to follow logically from it. Judgment of the courts are not to be construed as statutes. So, what has been explained by the Supreme Court in S.P. Gupta is the ratio decides the final conclusion on the given fact is the ratio of the, and that is binding. Now, to appreciate the binding precedent, a very lucid judgment of the Bombay High Court is in the case of Thane Electricity Supply Limited 206, where the court has very precisely explained this binding precedent. I will draw your attention to the side. The law declared by the Supreme Court is the law of the land, and therefore it is binding on all courts in India. However, the Supreme Court itself, which is free to review the same and depart from its earlier opinion if the situation so warrants. What is binding is of course the ratio of the decision and not every expression found therein. We can't pick a particular sentence or a particular paragraph and say that, oh, the court has said this. In what circumstances what I will say to be considered, and what is the crux of the decision, the ratio of the decision. B. The decision of the High Court are binding on the subordinate courts and authorities and the tribunals under its supervision throughout the territories in relation to which it exercises jurisdiction. It does not extend beyond its territorial jurisdiction. So the Bombay High Court jurisdiction will lie all over the Maharashtra. And if any authority is taking a decision, then it is bound by the decision given by the Bombay High Court. A position in regard to binding nature of the decision of a High Court on a different benches of the same court may be summed up. A single judge of a High Court is bound by the decision of another single judge or a division bench of the same High Court. It would be judicial impropriety to ignore that decision. Judicial committee demands that a binding decision to which his attention is drawn should neither be ignored nor overlooked. Next. A division bench of a High Court should follow a division bench of decision of another division bench of the equal strength or a full bench of the same High Court. If one division bench differs from another division bench of the same High Court, it should refer a case to a larger bench. So two division bench cannot take a two contrary view. If the second bench feels that they are unable to convince themselves about the decision taken by the first division bench, then they will have to refer the matter to the Chief Justice, where the Chief Justice will form a larger bench of 3 judges or 5 judges, and the decision will be taken, wherein both the views will be then considered by a larger bench. Where there are conflicting decisions of courts of coordinate jurisdiction, the latter decision is to be preferred if reached after full consideration of earlier decisions. The decision of one High Court is neither binding decision for another High Court nor of courts or tribunals outside the territorial jurisdiction. To put it simply, the decision of the Gujarat High Court is not binding on the authorities in the state of Maharashtra. But there is one decision which I have not referred here, but it requires a reference. It is of Gujarat High Court in the case of Arvind Board and Paper Products Limited in 137 ITR 635. Here the Gujarat High Court is saying that when tax matters which are governed by all India statute, there is a decision of another High Court on the interpretation of a statute provision. It would be wise judicial policy and a practice not to take a different view, barring of course certain exceptions. The earlier decision is sub silentio or per incurium or obiter, or is based on a concession given by either party, or a view which is impossible to arrive at. In such circumstances, the different other High Court may not consider that. Otherwise, in a texting statutes, it is judicial propriety demands that the High Court follows another High Court decision. In Siemens India Limited, the Bombay High Court held that merely because an appeal has been filed or a special leave application is pending against a decision of the High Court would not denude that decision of its binding effect. Just because a decision is given by the Bombay High Court which is challenged by either party who is not satisfied with it, and the SLP is pending or is admitted, does not mean that the decision, binding precedent of the decision is no more in existence. It is still binding unless the Supreme Court, while admitting the SLP, stays the decision and says that this decision will now be stayed, is not to be applied. Then only it loses its binding precedent. Otherwise, it is binding till the Supreme Court reverses. that decision.
Even if it is state will bind the other courts, sir.
Big pardon.
The proposition of mentioning that will state by the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Slight difference. If it reversed by the Supreme Court, no question arises.
Right.
Even if it is state by the Supreme Court,
Right.
another matter comes before the High Court.
Hmm.
The High Court is bound by its earlier judgment.
Right.
So there is no, because first division bench has taken a view. Matter has gone to the Supreme Court. So
Correct.
to state the first judgment.
Right.
Matter comes to the second division bench.
Right.
The second division bench is bound by the first division bench.
First division.
Even if it is state.
Yeah, even if it is state.
61 STC, Andhra full bench.
Correct.
And 24 STC, Garlic and County.
Correct, correct.
Obviously.
Because so far as the High Court is concerned, it is bound by its division bench. But generally it is being contended that no, the SLP is pending, so therefore the decision is not binding. Is wrong. That's what.
That's like even one merger, etc. Once a leave is granted and civil appeal is admitted, then merger will be governed by the out of the appellate court. That's for a completely different purpose. As a precedent, judgment of the court will continue to bind.
Continue to bind.
You know, merger is a different one.
Oh yeah, merger is a different aspect. Correct. Very true.
Sorry.
No. It is enlightenment and it's very useful. And such discussion should take place, in fact. That is the purpose of this seminar. Now, the two more decisions which I am drawing your attention is that effect of order of dismissal of SLP or appeal by non-speaking order. In Patna High Court has said that it is well settled principle of law that when a special petition is summarily dismissed under Article 136, such dismissal does not lay down any law. Rather, it shall be deemed to be, Supreme Court has simply held that it is not a fit case where a special petition should be granted. The same principle will not apply in a case where a civil appeal is dismissed by the Supreme Court, because once the appeal is admitted, then the court has taken a decision that it is a fit case for the appeal. And then thereafter, even if it is dismissed, it means that the decision of the High Court is approved by the Supreme Court and it becomes the decision of the Supreme Court. In Gangadhar Palo, the Supreme Court said that even if a special petition is dismissed for some reason, however limited that may be one sentence or a very meager sentence, but once a reason is given, then the even dismissal of the SLP would amount to a decision of the Supreme Court, and the High Court decision becomes the Supreme Court decision, or it has approved the decision of the High Court. Then the decision of the tribunal is binding on the CIT appeals and also the assessing officer under its jurisdiction. Two decisions I have drawn your attention. And one more decision that was of DLF Universal, that a decision of a coordinate bench is binding on the another bench of the tribunal. Like from Bombay High Court.
The assessing officer never accept even tribunal favorable judgment. We are citing, they say we are not accepting your.
That is wrong. It is really a contempt of law. You can't say that. You should ask him to write it in his order that I will not follow this order. See, they have so wide a power, you can't help it. If he says that I don't want to follow, then you will have to take his order to the higher authority, appellate authority. Then if I go to the next slide. Here, if a circular is in conflict with the law laid down by the High Court or the Supreme Court, the revenue authorities, while acting quasi-judicially, should ignore such circular in discharge of their quasi-judicial function. So the circular will not be if it is contrary to the law laid down by the High Court or the Supreme Court, that the revenue authority should not follow that. Then binding decision of earlier decision of the AAR, that is Authority for Advanced Ruling. Then the AAR suggested that they should be slow in disagreeing with the proposition of law already on the related facts already taken. They should be slow in deciding. But if they come to the new facts, new circumstance, and in that the authority is required to change its view, then they are always free to do so. Lastly, the third doctrine which we are required to consider is the doctrine of merger.
Suppose that arbiter dicta of Supreme Court, what will you say? Arbiter dicta of Supreme Court.
But it is an order. It is not a
Ratio descending.
It is not a ratio exactly.
But then still, I'm told even arbiter dicta of Supreme Court is also binding.
No, you will have to see in which circumstances and in what context it has been so said. How is that arbiter dicta is there? You know, it will have to be seen in its context. Yeah. The doctrine of merger is a common law doctrine founded on principles of propriety in the hierarchy of the justice delivering system. The logic underlying the doctrine is that there cannot be more than one degree or operative order governing the same subject matter at given point of time. When a decree or order passed by an inferior court, tribunal or authority subject to a remedy available under the law before a superior forum, then though the decree or order under challenge continues to be effective and binding, its finality is put in jeopardy. When the superior court has disposed of the lease before it, either way, whether the decree or order under appeal is set aside or modified or simply confirmed, then the decree or order of the superior court, tribunal or authority, which is the final binding and operative decree or order, wherein the decree or order of the inferior court, tribunal or authority merges. If we go to the next slide, this is explained in the case of CIT versus Uttam Chand Jain. I will just hurriedly take you through the slide, where the doctrine of merger is not a doctrine of rigid and universal application. Whether there is a fusion of or a merger of the order of the inferior tribunal into an order of superior tribunal will have to be determined by finding out the subject matter of the appellate or revisional order and the scope of appeal or revision contemplated by a particular statute. Ordinarily, a judgment pronounced in appellate or revisional jurisdiction after issuing a notice of hearing to both the parties would replace the judgment of the lower court, thus constituting the appellate or revisional judgment the only final judgment. The doctrine of merger does not apply where an appeal is dismissed for default and having abated by reason of the omission of the appellant to impede the legal representatives of the deceased respondents or as barred by limitation. And that judgment does not merge. If we go to the last two judgments, in William Salgaonkar, an appeal was dismissed by the Supreme Court by a non-speaking order. It was held by the Supreme Court that the High Court order has birthed into the order of the Supreme Court, and therefore it is the Supreme Court order and not that of the High Court. Similar was the decision of the Bombay High Court in ICICI Bank. Here, few facts, if I hurriedly take you through, is that the first order was passed where the deduction under section 36, 1, 7 and 7A were allowed to the bank. First time the assessment was reopened for reworking the deduction under section 80L. Second time assessment was reopened for disallowing the deduction under section 36(1)(a). Thereafter, the CIT passed the 263 order for disallowing the deduction under section 36(1)(7). The revenue appeal was dismissed by the High Court, and the High Court held that the first order has merged with the subsequent order, and therefore you cannot challenge the first order. And secondly, on the grounds that in view of section 263(2), the time was also left, that becomes time barred, and therefore also you cannot challenge that the order has merged. With this, I will conclude and thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Judge. A very simple and useful analysis of so-called subject which is as such a dry subject, very interesting. I would request our committee member Ravi Shah to please come to one of thanks. And I would request all of you to please be seated. We will start our next session immediately within very short time, just with the change of class after this, and then immediately we will start. So that we can do justice to the topic, and we take the benefit of the wisdom of all the faculty. Please be seated. Immediately after this one of this, we will start our next session. Please.
Good morning to all the dignitaries on the dais, and my dear friends. It gives me immense pleasure